Today we are talking about the 1978 mass shooter who famously said in an interview that her reasoning behind the shooting was, quote, "I just don't like Mondays," end quote. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to my channel and Killer Concepts, the place where we talk about all things true crime. My name is Peyton. If you have not done so already, please make sure to hit that red subscribe button down below and turn on your post notifications so you do not miss any future content. Trigger warning for this one, as it does talk about thoughts of suicide and mass shootings, which may be triggering to some. I am rushing a little bit today as I have an event to be at, so if my editing is not the best, please forgive me. Today we are talking about a woman named Brenda Spencer, who was 16 years old when she decided to fire 36 rounds from a .22 rifle at the elementary school across the street from her house. This is one of the first really big cases that brought attention to mass shootings, especially involving schools. This was the end of the 70s, and people just weren't concerned about this as much. It definitely did not happen as much as it does now. This case, like many others, is especially sad not only because 2 people were killed and 9 others were injured, but also because Brenda had shown many signs of needing help before this happened. In fact, she had been in trouble multiple times before, showed signs of suicidal ideation, and her probation officer had recommended her go to a psych ward, but her father refused. I just hate when events like this could have possibly been avoided, but it's just ignored. We will get to all of that in a little bit though. We are first going to discuss who Brenda Spencer was, what her home life was like, then we will get into what happened and the aftermath. We may also talk about Brenda Spencer now, but just very briefly, as she is still alive and serving her time in prison. Brenda Spencer was born on April 3rd, 1962 to Dorothy, known as Dot, and Wallace, known as Wally Spencer. Brenda's parents had divorced, and she actually lived in poverty with her father. It wasn't that they had the worst home or lived in the worst area, but they lived in pretty bad conditions. Their home was located in a San Carlos neighborhood of San Diego, California, in a house across the street from Grover Cleveland Elementary School, where the shooting would eventually occur. Her and her father apparently slept on a single mattress on the living room floor, and when police searched the home after Brenda's arrest, they would find liquor bottles and other substances just scattered all around. It definitely was not the best place for a teenager to be growing up in. Brenda was a fairly thin girl with red hair, and she only stood at about 5'2". One of her classmates actually described her as, quote, "pretty crummy looking," end quote. I do know Brenda was different, but I am not sure if she was bullied by these classmates or fellow people in school, because I haven't really found anything saying that. Brenda's friends did report that she had said some pretty alarming things at times. She had mentioned that she wanted to do something big to become famous and gain some notoriety. She had apparently actually talked about possibly shooting a police officer and showed much hostility towards them, and this would get her media attention had she done it. So when Brenda Spencer was younger, she actually showed a lot of promise as a potential photographer. She even won an award from the Humane Society for it, but she slowly started to go downhill. She would start falling asleep in class and was showing signs of suicidal ideation. Her behavior would actually begin to become quite alarming, but her father never really paid much attention to it from what I have read. Brenda was known to hunt birds in the neighborhood, and she would also end up being arrested for shooting windows out Grover Cleveland Elementary School, as well as burglary. With these arrests, Spencer would get a parole officer, and her parole officer was actually pretty concerned about her and her growing misbehavior. They were so concerned, in fact, that in December of 1978, the parole officer would have a psych evaluation done on her. This evaluation would result in a recommendation that she spend some time in a mental facility, as she was exhibiting signs of depression. Her father, however, would reject this. And this recommendation would not go forward. He would not give his permission for her to be admitted. It gets crazier though. So when Christmas comes around, Brenda had asked her father for a radio as a stocking stuffer. But what did he get her instead? A .22 caliber rifle with a telescope and 500 rounds of ammunition. So why in the world Mr. Spencer thought it would be a good idea to buy his daughter, who was thought to have depression, a rifle is beyond me. It is quite upsetting, actually, as 2 people may still be alive had this not been done. But along with buying her a rifle, he really should have gotten her help. It isn't that there wasn't an attempt or that she wasn't showing clear signs of needing it. He just wouldn't accept it, and it really is a shame. Obviously, we don't know the whole story and can only speculate, but Brenda pretty clearly did not have the best upbringing. Her father was reportedly abusive, and as I'm sure you surmised, an alcoholic from all the alcohol found in the home. Brenda had also apparently used drugs such as PCP, and she stated that when the event happened, she had been using drugs and alcohol, but not specifically PCP. But that's her account. It's not what was recorded. So now we will discuss the actual event. Keep in mind, there is a lot of footage on this incident, and I will link it down below in the description box. So on January 29th, 1979, Brenda Spencer, who was 16 years old at the time, would set herself up inside her home with ammunition and the .22 rifle her father had gotten her for Christmas. She would sit at the window, and as people began to arrive at Cleveland Elementary School across from her home, she would begin to shoot them. Brenda pretty much shot at anything that moved. She would fire 36 rounds of ammunition, and 11 of them would hit those who she was aiming for. 2 would be killed and 9 would be injured. In total, it was 3 adults and 8 children. The 2 who would be killed would be the elementary school's Principal Burton Ragg, and the custodian Michael Schuler. 1 would be dead on scene, and the other would die in surgery at the hospital. The other adult who was shot was a police officer named Robert Robb, who was trying to help the children. The 8 children who were struck had their lives changed forever, and in interviews, many say that they will never forget the incident. Spencer would shoot at the school for 20 minutes before having a standoff with San Diego SWAT for more than 6 hours before she would finally give herself over to the police. They had a negotiator on site, and Spencer had eventually decided to cooperate with them. In one of the videos I linked below, Spencer, once in prison, says that she doesn't recall much of that day because she believes she was in a drug and alcohol-induced haze, but she remembers being frightened as the SWAT team had surrounded her. When police would retrieve Spencer, they would find her rifle along with 200 rounds of unspent ammunition inside of the home. Brenda Spencer would be charged as an adult, and in 1980 would plead guilty to 2 counts of murder. Her sentence was 2 25-year to life sentences that were concurrent. The 9 counts of attempted murder were dismissed in the case for everyone she had hit that day. So Brenda is still in prison, though she had been eligible for parole several times, but has been rejected each time. Her act was so hateful. I never understand how anyone could shoot at children. When you watch the videos that are down below in the description box, they're interviews with Brenda in, I believe, the 1990s. She just seems to have no remorse. Now, that's just my opinion. That's just what I took from it. Her eyes do not look upset about what occurred. I know she can't change it, but it seems like she just wants to look forward and be able to live a normal life, and she just affected so many lives that day, so I don't see how that's possible. So you may or may not have heard this before, but Brenda Spencer was widely known for being the mass shooter who told a reporter in a phone interview that her reason for the shooting was, quote, "I just don't like Mondays. I did this because it's a way to cheer up the day," end quote. She had also said at one point, quote, "I just started shooting. That's it. I just did it for the fun of it," end quote. This is an absolutely chilling statement and definitely shows signs of mental illness. This statement by her would actually inspire the hit song "I Don't Like Mondays" by Irish rock band the Boomtown Rats. I don't understand why anyone would want to make a song that was inspired by something a mass shooter said. This gave her the notoriety that she had mentioned to her friends previously about wanting, but I guess it is what it is. Everybody has their own motivations. My heart goes out to all of the families that were affected by this event. While this wasn't the most deadly mass shooting at the time, it did impact all of the families of the children who went to and the teachers who worked at that school. Brenda Spencer intrigues me, I think, for the reason that we do not see many female mass shooters. At this time this had happened, it was not the deadliest, but it was perpetrated by a woman. This was very unusual. It wasn't something that had been seen in the past. It was the end of the 70s, and while large shootings happened, it was nothing like what goes on today. It also was done in an interesting way, as she was posed inside her house, whereas in most mass shootings, the mass shooters are entering the schools and they enter the building, but that isn't the case here. I think when we look at mass shootings, we can learn a lot from them. We can learn how to possibly prevent them in the future. Many mass murderers have mental issues going on. Many of them have shown signs of what they may do or them not being completely stable. Spencer was recommended to go to a mental hospital, but her father said no. However, the way mental illness was looked at back in the late 70s, early 80s, and even the 90s and early 2000s is much different than it is today. It had much more of a stigma to it. I think that if you ever have any inkling that something may be wrong, report it to someone, get someone help. It just isn't worth the possible tragedy that may occur, and that seems to occur many times when it's ignored. The U.S. has only seen a significant rise in these kinds of shootings since 1979. In an article by the LA Times, quote, "A USC professor who has studied school shootings agreed that while they can no longer consider them new, they tend to cast a wider, more significant effect on society through widespread news reporting and posts on social media sites." He said, quote, "That shooting probably affected every person on that campus," Ron A.V. Astor, professor of social work and education, said of the San Carlos shooting. "It has a very strong ripple effect. Even if you're not hit by a bullet that stays with you forever, it's like the ripple in a pond that goes through generations and a community," end quote. With that being said, that is all I have for you today. And like I said previously, my heart goes out to anyone who has been affected by an event such as this. I do want to mention that I apologize my video was late this week, but I just had a lot going on. So please make sure to hit that red subscribe button down below and turn on your post notifications if you have not done so already. Should you have any case suggestions, please send them to killerconceptsvlog@gmail.com or comment them down below. You can also follow me on social media. With that being said, just remember that the world's most dangerous minds hide in the most unlikely places. Stay safe.